Welcome to Not at All Beholder's Eye. This is Kim. I got to do a panel at Gencon this year. First time ever going, and some good podcast buddies of ours got together to do a little thing called Playable Podcasts Engage the Audience, in which we discussed things that you can do with your actual play podcast to make it better, or at least, get you started, because this kind of thing is a little crazy and it takes a lot. Oh, at one point, they do mention my cosplay, which that day happened to be a Black Widow. I'll have to post some pictures up somewhere. But anyway, all of us will be introduced right away at the beginning, so without further ado, our panel.
Welcome! How's everybody's Gencon doing? Let's hear it for Gencon Day 2!
Whoop,
Yeah.
whoop.
All right, welcome. My name's David Steele. I'm from the Steel Empire. We made our little empire. Our D&D podcast, Tabletop, is a quest for magic and steel. I get to say that every time we record, so it's fun. And so I am basically the host and the character, and my daughter, the amazing Amara, is my DM. She's the DM from A Quest of Magic and Steel. And then we have CA, Chaotic Anarchy. Anybody know her on Twitter? We have Kim and Chase. So we're going to go down, and I'll let you guys introduce yourself. Tell us what podcasts you have. Chase will take about 20 minutes to tell us all his podcasts. Podcasts you have, and that's it. And we'll move on from there. So your name, and where you're from, what part of the world?
So, like he had said, I'm his daughter. My name is Amara. We've got a couple podcasts in there. One is Arc City. It's a audio drama. Apologize. And then we also have a D&D podcast, which we call A Quest for Magic and Steel. And I DM on that. We're actually from the East Coast in New Jersey. We're closer to Philadelphia. I think that's it, yeah.
Can you hear me? Well, I'm pretty loud anyway, right? I am Chaotic Anarchy from Thread Raiders podcast out by Philadelphia. David is actually a part of that as well with me, my co-host.
And just so you know, TK is not dead. This is not a memorial. TK couldn't be here. Hey, Jackie. TK is part of the Thread Raiders podcast
That's
as well.
Right. Mm-hmm.
The tilted. He is tilted.
The tilted kilted.
The kilted Sea Lord.
Lord.
Yes. Go on. I'm sorry to interrupt.
And his photos randomly spread throughout the room. So just in case you just don't know what he looks like, you can turn in any direction and he will be there. All right, for you, Kim.
I'm Kim Metzger, aka Metz Girl, on Twitter and all the places. I am primarily Service Desk is actually my main podcast, in which we talk about tech stuff for the not so technically savvy. But the reason I'm here is because I'm also on Beholder's Eye Pod, which is an actual play D&D, blah blah blah. You guys all know this. So, and I'm from Nebraska, but the rest of the Beholder's Eye crew is spread. One's close to Indianapolis, but the rest are in like England and California and all those places. So, good stuff.
And I also want to point out the cosplay. Wonderful. Very nice.
Chase.
And I guess that'll take it to me. My name is Chase Greenlee, at TQ Loudly on Twitter. I am on a bevy of podcasts, but the relevant one for this moment is Another Path. It is an actual play D&D podcast, just like many of these fine folks here. We bill ourselves as a theatrical tabletop RPG. We go a lot into character building and world building as well, just kind of getting that whole holistic experience so that it comes out a lot more like an audio drama than a typical D&D session.
And puns. Don't forget your puns.
And puns.
Nice. And then we're going to go as well down the line. We'll start with you, Chase, and come back this way.
Sure.
So basically, we're going to talk about the main topic is TTRPGs and podcasting. So how did you go from playing the game with your friends or whoever, family, and then, hey, I'm going to make it a podcast? So tell us your little story. And
Absolutely. Well, I had been playing TTRPGs for on and off for about 10 years before I started actually recording it. It was kind of a long road to it, moving in and out of the city that I'm from. I'm from Bowling Green, Ohio, about 3.5 hours away. Woo! Huh? Nice. Got an alum up here. Awesome. Another alum. I also have 2 other attendees, people that I play with. My friend Zan is back there, somebody who I started playing TTRPGs with about 10 years ago. And Griffin, my co-host on Another Path, is in the audience as well. Yeah. But we, about 3 years ago now. No, 2.5, Griffin? Is it 2.5? Yeah, 2.5 years ago. We were playing and we just kind of looked at each other like, we have to know how to do this. Let's give it a go. And so I wrote up a quick one-shot. We recorded it and we liked how it sounded, so we put it out in the world and people latched on.
It's real good, y'all.
Shucks.
So I am a little bit different. I started, for my son at home, we started playing D&D, and I liked it, but it was real hard because we live in small town Nebraska, and there's not really a lot of nerds around. So I kind of turned to my online community because was working on getting Service Desk started. So I was reaching out to all these fine folks to talk about, like, what do you do? How do you do this thing? I don't understand. And once I got to that point, I was talking about my DMing and my playing on Twitter, and the people of Beholder's Eye, I was contacting them a lot to get advice, and they were like, hey, you want to join us? I was like, heck yeah, I do. That sounds amazing. And so that's kind of where that came from. And I don't jump in until episode 15, but it's really fun. I like it a lot. And other than that, that December is when I started playing or DMing, and then that March I started recording with them. And that was about 1.5 years ago. So I'm kind of a newbie to this whole RPG thing, but it's real fun.
Yeah. So our podcast is a little bit different. It's not an actual play. We just talk about nerdy things.
But it's awesome.
We have a lot of guests and creators on the show because that's really what it's about. We want to know what you guys are doing and what's happening out there. That's what really makes the show for us. So I didn't actually get into podcasting through actual play. There is a community by the name of Thread Raiders out there. And we go out and we try to make all kinds of amazing things happen. We spread positivity throughout the community.
Lots
You'll
of
probably see
fundraisers.
us all over Twitter.
Fundraisers.
Yes, we raise money for various charities, for Extra Life. We have Action Against Hunger coming up, and it's all online gaming. Anybody can participate. We always accept volunteers. That's really what it's about. And so David...
Yes.
Our podcast god, was like, hey, we could start a podcast. And I was like, yes, David. Yes, we can. We can do that. And that's how it began. And we've been podcasting ever since. And it's been such an amazing experience.
And he does that a lot.
Yes.
He just lets us start the podcast all the time. So I actually started playing D&D at Pathfinder and 3.5 edition in my high school years. I played with friends, and it was cool. I hung out. We played for literally weekends. And then I started playing at home a little bit with some friends. I would bring them over. And then my dad saw it, and
What the heck?
he said it was really cool, and he wanted to try to do it with the family. So I decided to set up a campaign. It was just a starter box, I think I brought home. And I did it with, I did it with my dad, 3 of my 4 siblings, and some, 2 of my friends. And he liked it so much that he started doing audio drama or audio voiceovers. So he had a studio, and he thought, why not start a podcast? And we like to play this. We have fun with it. So we decided to do that. And we sat all together as a family, deciding on a name, on what we want to do, because we wanted to get the domain for everything, to make sure we had a website for our podcast, and make Twitter handles and Facebook or whatever we're on, Instagram, and just make sure we have all of the names so that nobody else has them. So we decided with Steel Empire, and then we're branching off of there, and we got a quest for Magic and Steel for the D&D specific podcast.
Yeah, David is the spark to our podcasting fire.
Before I forget, a couple things. Thread Raiders. Everyone can be a Thread Raider. I know some people in here are Thread Raiders. If you don't know what Thread Raiders is, it's just an online community that's amazing.
Yeah.
We do a bunch of stuff. There's a lot of RPG, TTRPG people in it, but there's video game people. Anybody. You don't have to be anything. Just be an online social media person. If you're on there and you want a family that is super cool and respects you and loves you and is there for you, we have a great Discord. Talk to me, or CA is basically the mama of Thread Raiders. And we'll give you the directions. We'll give you the handle and all that good stuff. And so you're welcome to become a Thread Raider. Yeah. Also, at the end, we're going to have questions and answers. So don't worry about that if you have any questions. How many people have their own podcast?
Wow.
I knew it. All right, I guess I saw those. All right, we're going to ask about that. Fantastic.
It counts. You're podcasting.
Okay. And we have, how many people want to start a podcast? Haven't started yet.
Nice.
Awesome. Fantastic. Great. So we're going to talk about podcasting as well, and in particular about getting started if you have any questions for that as well. Okay. All right. So now also about playing the games. This will be, I guess, CA, you'll be kind of out of this one. Sorry. But for the people that actually record their D&D, or not even D&D, their RPG shows, how often do you record? Is it, weekly, monthly? Do you do the big, I know some people do like a 6-hour session once a month and then chop it up and put it out on a podcast. Some people do it weekly, blah, blah, blah. So we'll start with Chase.
Sure. Well, we record about once a month, give or take. We'll record for anywhere from 2 to 4 hours, and that typically gets us about 2 episodes worth. We release 2 episodes a month every other week on Wednesdays. And from there, what I will do is just in outlining what's going to be happening, I can usually just about figure out where the break is going to end up being. Sometimes I'm off a little bit, but it's a living medium. Sometimes you end up with a short episode of 40 minutes. Sometimes you end up with an hour and a half long episode. It really, you just kind of have to be flexible with it. At least that's what I have found. Kind of gonna have to budget your time depending on what happens in the episode.
Because when combat takes an hour.
Exactly.
Yeah, exactly. So I'm just going to jump in.
Yeah, go for it.
I am Beholder's Eye does it. We do about once a month. We will record for 5-ish hours, depending on technical difficulties and all that jazz. Oh. And we actually do it so that we're recording and then we take a break. And then we record the next one and take a break. So we cut it into 4 different chunks. So every time we record, there's at least 4 episodes being made. I've done other podcasts because I guest on all of the things. The main podcast I've been on recently is called LCP D&D, and they do it so that they're recording just one at a time, which is weird, but so we go. And so then we play for like an hour to 2 hours, depending on what's happening. And they trim it up from there because there's a lot of dead space while you're playing. Because, the player that's sitting there for literally a solid minute, silent, trying to think about what they're going to say or do, you don't want that in a podcast. So that gets cut out. And so then it gets condensed quite a bit. But it's usually, it's from 50 minutes to like an hour and a half, I think is the longest one of those. So, yeah.
Can I answer anyway?
Absolutely.
All right. Even though we're not an actual play, for those who are starting a podcast that's more, geek-based or maybe not about Dungeons and Dragons, we talk a lot. Gasp. We talk maybe 2.5 hours for a recording because we really want the guests to be able to talk about what they're passionate about. We don't want to cut that off at any point in time. So some of our episodes do go a little long, like hour and a half, but it's important content and it's stuff that we think you guys might think that's important. So when you're thinking about how long your podcast should be, just really take that into consideration. Don't feel like, oh, well, I got to cut this whole section out that this guest did about, something that might be really important or somebody else in the community might really love.
Yeah.
Thank you.
No problem. As the Quest for Magic and Steel, we started off recording every week. So we had a day that we were able to get on Sunday in the morning that we got everyone in. It was cool because we were living in the same house, at least 3 of us. And then I just had to get my friend over, which kind of sucked sometimes, a little late. But we normally recorded probably about an hour and a half to 2 hours, because if we were there any longer, we would start to fidget, we'd start to make noises, or if people weren't paying attention, they'd go on their phone. And just having the mic in front of you is really tough to record for a long session. I like the breaking it up, but we never really had the time actually, so most of the time I would work, or if he had work, so we'd only have that hour to play. But it was still a good hour that we got in, and because we did it every week, we were able to put it out. We started every week, but then it got too much, so every other week is what we do, or at least we tried to. so that we have an extra recording to back up. That way, if we need to put another one out, it was easy to do that.
I always feel bad because I'm very animated, so I have my microphones in front of me and I constantly whack into it all the time. David has to edit it all. I know. So I'll get a message hey, easy on the mic, man. Stop it. And then on the Beholder's Eye, I felt really bad. They asked me to come on for an episode and I was so excited about it, but my chair kept squeaking. And so I didn't realize I was doing my thing and I'm oh, characters, yes. And then I got a message hey, what's up with that chair?
Oh, no.
Sorry, guys.
Too funny. Yeah, I remember. If you actually, it's still on our feed. Our first episode, Quest for Magic and Steel. It was insane because we've never done it before. It was our first time podcasting. We didn't have stands. We all had mics like this, and we were just her boyfriend was hitting it all the time. And we had it all on one track, so it was oh my God. So I had to chop it all up, pain in the butt. Anyway, yeah. So I want to ask also. I think you guys all do online, right? You
Correct.
Don't meet together.
Yes.
Right? Okay.
So
and where are all your people at?
Everybody, as of today, actually, we are all going to be in Northwest Ohio. We had a member for about most of the time we've been recording, actually. He has been based out of the Twin Cities area, but he is moving back as we speak. He's probably going to be passing us here very shortly to get back to Bowling Green, Ohio. That'll put 3 of us in BG. We have one member, Ryan, who lives up in Toledo, which is 20 minutes away. I actually work right around the corner from where he lives. So we're all right there, which is really great for time zone planning.
Yeah.
That'll actually condense us back down to one, which will be nice for that little bit of confusion, which every so often pops up. But we will still be doing everything online. It makes it much easier for audio editing to have everybody on separate tracks, different rooms. We use Zoom to actually bridge that communication gap that costs $15 a month, but because it does do a secondary backup recording track, we think that's worth it for us.
Yeah, and we're going to ask Kim too, but we're going to go back over that as well as far as details. If anybody
Absolutely.
has questions about details of how it's done.
Oh
Kim,
my gosh.
also, yeah, so you're online recording for Beholder's Eye. And
Right.
where is everybody at?
We have England,
Nice.
Indianapolis, Nebraska, and California. Time zones suck, y'all.
Yeah,
they
They're
do.
real bad.
Absolutely.
Totally.
I don't like them. So consequently, we have to record on Saturday because for our poor England person, we start at 9 p.m. for him and we record for 5+ hours.
Mm-hmm.
He's real tired by the end. So if you're ever listening and Hibonite starts not making sense, that's why. It's 3 a.m. for him.
Agreed.
But yeah, so we do the individual track recording that way, and we actually go through Discord and use Craigbot, which is amazing.
Mm-hmm.
And then we use the video on Roll20 because we roll everything there. But
Nice. And we also, as a family, we meet in our basement, a furnished basement. We have an old dining room table, and I do some soundproofing in there, and we record around the table. And I'm kind of a stickler for audio, quality audio, so I get kind of mental. So my whole deal when we started it was, now there's a million TTRPG podcasts out there. When we started ours, I started listening on podcasts in 2015. There was only 1 or 2 that I could find. Critical Hit was an amazing one where I actually learned how to play D&D, listen to this. That's why I started listening to that, because I was new to D&D when we started our podcast. She was teaching me. I listened to them, and then I couldn't find any real good ones that had character voices and more of a dramatic show that was entertaining. I didn't want to listen to the drunk guys around the table, one mic, just, F your mother, I didn't care about that. So some people love it, though. There's some popular shows. I don't want to downplay it. But so our whole thing and our focus was, I want to make this podcast for the listener. I want it to be focused on them. So everything we do, that's why we only do the 1 hour spots, because I want it to be really focused on one little story episode. So when you're listening to it, you're in for one episode that's going to have some action or whatever, some kind of drama, and then there's an end to it. And then we every week it's like that. So I just wanted to add that. Okay, so your equipment. Okay, I want to know from you guys, what kind of equipment do you have, and how's it set up for you, and any tips you have about that?
Sure. Well, all of us are set up on the Yeti snowballs. It is the super Not super cheap. It's about $50 or so to get one of those. They are kind of the standard entry microphone, but the sound quality is very good. If you've got room noise, it does make it pretty simple to edit that out. You don't get a whole lot of crackles or pops or anything from it. Very manageable. We also do all have mic stands for them as well. Again, you can go for, just like a microphone, you can go from fairly cheap and maybe a little squeaky with spring. Ours still have the springs on them where you can twang them and you can hear them. Yeah, you can hear it all the way through the microphone. But of course, you can get higher end ones that don't have that problem. And honestly, like the twanginess is only a problem if you do a mic punch. So
Yeah, don't punch your mic.
Don't do mic punches.
Don't hit your
Griffin, no mic punches. But yeah, I mean, it's fairly straightforward. If you've got that, I need to actually look into potentially soundproofing. I moved 3 days ago, so I need to re-soundproof the studio and see what that's going to be like before we record again. But that, for most people, you don't need to do a whole lot of soundproofing. As long as you educate yourself on how to do noise cancellation, which varies from program to program.
Griffin, that's later. I know. That's later. I just want to know what you have now. That's later. We'll get to that. Kim, you're up.
Okay, equipment. I started with the Yeti, blue Yeti mic, and for my house that was really bad because it picked up everything. Don't do that. So I moved to a dynamic. It's actually a Samsung Q2U, and it's relatively inexpensive. Like you get a whole little podcasting kit with like one of these cover thing dingers and a little tripod.
These cover thing dingers. I love it.
Technical term.
Yes,
Yep. Mm-hmm.
we're very technical here. And then that is on a mic stand that I actually have a little microwave cart that I have my laptop on because I record in a closet with the soundproofing on the walls and stuff. So, yeah.
So I don't remember what I have. I'm going to read it to you. It is an Audio Technica ATR 2100. It's a USB mic. These are really good for my voice because I don't know if you realize I'm super loud and my laugh has a tendency to hit such a frequency it will drive David crazy. So this one doesn't pick it up so much, and then it allows David not to die while he's editing our videos. So.
Also, now, anything specific, a tip about people starting podcasts? We're going to start with Kim.
So there's a multitude of ways I've heard podcast people do their recordings. If you are in the same room and you're using just like one blue Yeti mic or worse, try not to. It's real bad. I have a thing against like recording on one mic. Or if you do, like, just know that like you're going to be turning a few people off from listening because the variation from that one person that sits here and talks really loud, but this other person over here that talks real quiet, like you're not going to be able to level those out nearly as easily in your editing process. But it kind of depends on what kind of podcast you want to do. If you're just recording it so you remember what happened during your D&D session, that's totally valid. If that's what you want to do, that's cool. But if you want to like gain a podcast audience and actually engage them and bring them in and have that good sound quality, because everybody and their brother is now like a super microphone expert, you want to make sure that if you are in the same room, you at least have a setup in which you have multiple mics or a mic for each person, and then know that the editing is going to be a little bit harder. If you're individual, we all record on Audacity. So we do individual recordings on Audacity and we all upload it to a drive. You can also do the Craigbot. He records individual channels, which is super duper nice. And I think Zoom does.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
You get the individual channels?
Yep, Zoom does individual channels. It also does, I believe it also does individual video as well. So if you wanted to put it on some kind of like video on demand, put it on YouTube, something like that, I do believe Zoom also saves that as well.
Cool.
Yeah.
Very cool. If you are trying to actually like reach out and engage a whole bunch of people and pull people into your podcast, make sure the audio quality is good.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I have a thing.
I think we already kind of answered this, but I'll throw this out there again in case we want to add anything. But so what makes playing a role-playing game with your friends around the table different when you're trying to put it out for audio consumption? Anything you want to add to that? I think we answered most of that.
It does. It is going to change how you think about things when you're actually sitting down to put stuff together, not just for the DM, but also for the players. It's very, very easy to get in your own head of what are people going to think about what happens here. You're going to think about setting up narrative beats a little bit differently. And if you've been playing with the same people for a long time, like I have, you're also going to be very conscious of trying to not crib things that are second nature, things that are in your lexicon already. Like I said, I've been playing with the same group of people on and off for about 10 years. We have, internal lore that goes back even longer than that. And that is, I cannot access any of that, which is an easy thing to say until you're sitting down to write. It's like, okay, who's my big bad? Well, I can't use all of the traditional big bads that we use. It is starting from a clean slate and trying to do that and trying not to bring in inside jokes can be a challenge for a lot of people.
And with character development, I think one of the big things for me was trying to come up with something that was more dynamic and not just like, you have a wizard and you use magic missile every time you attack. That's no fun for your podcast audience. Like, come up with something that has a good story behind it if you can. And if you're trying to draw people in, make sure that your character is dynamic and people can latch on to like what's going on. So like, I have a list of questions. You can reach out to me later to get these, but that Alex, my DM for Beholder's Eye, he gave me a list of questions like, what does your character do? And like, what is their goal in life? Where were they born? These kind of questions that really helped me to craft my character in a way that was more dynamic and I had more things to access. And even if you know nothing about the world that you're in, if you can at least just come out and be like, okay, I'm an elf, I'm from the woods, and I really like strawberries. Like, just have whatever, like, those character quirks that make it more fun. And if you can have that incorporated into your podcast, that gives people something to latch onto with your character. Like, oh, Solara likes strawberries. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Or
playing off of that character development too, and having a voice also helps a lot with having a podcast. Having a specific kind of voice.
I like to do my southern accent, but I don't do it for Beholder's Eye.
So that really helps bring in listeners. And they like to hear those different kinds of voices, especially if you're DMing too. It's really hard to have different voices, especially talking if you have more NPCs in a room at once. Mm-hmm. It's very difficult to take control of. But also making sure that when you're playing, normally if I'm just sitting around the table with my friends, we just kind of go off whoever wants to say things. And there's certain people that talk a lot and like to do a lot of things. But in a podcast, if you have people that aren't really used to doing those things, as a DM, you have to kind of help them and use NPCs or use your creative world to bring them in and actually have them talk and get them more motivated about like recording in that podcast.
And just keep in mind, like if you're just starting off a podcast, it's going to be rough. I'm not going to lie. I had to go through 3 mics to find one to accept me, okay? And that's okay. That's going to happen.
Podcaster.
Exactly. So try new things. Don't feel like, oh, well, everyone is using, a Yeti. I have to get a Yeti, because that's expensive too. If you're a podcaster, sometimes you don't have the money when you start off at. But this mic is perfectly good, and you can find sales online all the time. Amazon's your friend. Mm-hmm. So just make sure you add them. They have sales on mics all the time. Right. So, just remember to have fun with it. Don't get super stressed out or feel like you have to have the best equipment right away. Just figure out what works best for you. If Audacity is not your program, but something else is, it doesn't make it wrong. Exactly. Do what's best for you, because it's about having fun and enjoying the experience.
Yeah, I'm kind of a mic snob. I have a bunch of mics, and I'm very particular. I actually hate the Yetis. any snowball stuff. I hate them. But that's me. And no, they can work good though, and they're lower end price wise, but they are quality. I mean, you can if you know how to use it. The problem is most people don't know how to set up their mic correctly. Any mic, basically. And we can get, hopefully we have a couple minutes, but I don't know if we'll have time for that. We're also going to be hanging out in the hallway. I know they have something at 11, so we're going to have to run out of here. But we will be hanging out, cleaning up this stuff. I'll be
By the
dragging it out
water.
there. So yeah, if you have any questions that we don't get to, please stop and ask. We'd love to help you out on your journey.
Yeah.
Specifically, safety content warnings. All right, let's talk about that. You want to start, CA? You got any thoughts on that?
Well, the Thread Readers podcast has a CA warning for me, because you never know what I'm going to say or do. It really just depends. It's on what you're comfortable with. However, when I visit on other podcasts, the first thing I ask is, what is the rating? What do I have to do? Do I have to stop swearing like a sailor? Are the puns? Is this not a puntastic kind of, stream? Like, I was pretty good on yours.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
you
I
were
did
amazing.
really. I was a baby angel on your show.
We
like a
amazingly
baby
kept
angel.
it really clean.
It
I
was
was
impressive.
impressed.
It was really good. So I always ask the rating first before you go on. And it also depends. You don't know what the viewership is of the other podcasts either. So if they have a family friendly, like Empire Steel is family friendly, some things I can't say there, So, and that's okay, but you want to be respectful of the podcaster too. So it really just depends on the rating when it comes to.
And that's a decision
viewers.
you need to make like when you're starting.
Exactly. Don't
Like
change
if you
midway.
don't be like super family friendly and then like start dropping F-bombs every 5 seconds.
Yeah.
Like, not good. And I think that's something to keep in mind as you're starting your podcast as well, is to think about what kind of podcast are we? Are we going to be super dark and there's going to be gore all over the place?
Exactly.
Or are we going to like have certain boundaries? Like you described that you've chopped off their head, but you stop before you talk about the spurting blood or whatever.
Yeah.
Like
you don't want your kids listening, to the podcast one week and you're talking about Disney characters. It's so much fun. And then next week someone drops the F-bomb and you're like, and you try to cover your kids' ears. It's just not good. So try not to switch midway through. Try to definitely think about that ahead of time. And know your players too, because they have their own ratings as well. So you just want to make sure that there's no surprises or a lot of editing that may be involved. Just communicate with each other.
Yeah, it also depends like what you're looking for as listeners, because we have the Steel Empire as family friendly, and we get a lot of people that enjoy that it's family friendly.
Yeah.
And we also have it family friendly because we're also a family too, so it's a really good connection there. But even if something happens while recording, that's always why editing is really good, so you can edit those things out. Be careful if someone does say something in a recording while someone's speaking mid-sentence. You have to repeat yourself sometimes, and that happens a lot. So.
Yeah, I was going to just focus on that too. You just said it. We're family friendly, our show, Magic and Steel. So there's a choice when you first start podcasting. You have to be in iTunes. It's the beast. So you have to push your show. So that we'll get into that if you need it. But RSS feed goes to iTunes because it's the big one. And then there's a bunch of other places, Google and some other places we can talk about. But that's the main one you have to go to. And when you first set it up, you're going to have to make a choice. Am I going to be explicit or clean? You actually have to click a checkbox what your show is going to be like, because it's going to be rated on the podcast players. So that's important. Like you said, decide in the beginning. Even if you're just dropping one or two curses, you don't think it's that bad, it's explicit. All right, so there's a kind of a fine line there, or actually a gray line, I should say. Nobody knows exactly, but they will get you and throw you off if you say you're clean and you're not. All right. Also, I wanted to go back real quick, not talk about it too much. We can ask questions later if you have them. What do you use? I heard Audacity talked about. We use Audition, Adobe Audition. I just started practicing with that, fell in love with it. It sucks the pay thing, but I love it. It's so magical. I can just do so many things. It's too powerful, but it's fun. So what do you guys use? You do use when you record?
Audacity, yeah.
Audacity?
we use Audacity, Beholder's Eye. We actually have two editors. We have Sam, he does what we call the flow edit, which is putting all of the voices together and cutting out the dead space and making it all sound good together. And then Ben, he is the one who does all of the special effects. That's another thing you have to decide. If you're going to do music and special effects, or if you're just going to let it be just you guys talking. And I find that music and special effects bring people in better But it's up to you, and they have to be done decently well. But
And that was my next question. Thank you, Kim, for messing up my list.
Oh, no.
For Chase, but no, you're fine, Kim. I'm teasing. I apologize, too. We just have a time limit, so I'm trying to push things forward. So first, what do you use to record? And then talk about what she said, theater of the mind stuff.
Absolutely. So we use Audacity to record, and I am the editor, and I use Reaper to edit. And I do, pretty much actually the very similar process to what Kim mentioned. I do a flow edit, go on through, just kind of listen to everything, see how it's sounding in the mix. I'll upload that to my players to see, so they can give it a listen, give me any notes that they have, and then I will go back through, do a finer edit, and then put in music, intros, outros, all that fun stuff. I 100% agree with Kim. I really do think that especially music is really important for bringing people in. It allows you to set the stage and really bring people in as far as setting that stage for the environment that you're trying to work in. And of course, I have my notes down there, but forget that for right now. I know we're on a time crunch here. But the biggest thing is that when you're trying to set the mood and get things and trying to set things up, having that music, spending a lot of time doing that is going to pay dividends down the road as far as what people stick around for. There are so many resources out there for royalty-free and free-to-use music. SoundCloud is great. YouTube is great.
hit us up later for links.
Huh?
Hit us up later for
Oh,
links.
absolutely. Yes, please.
We're going to move on to social media stuff. But right before we do that, if you're starting a new podcast or you have one, I'm just going to answer this. And if you guys have anything you really feel like you want to add, but just for time's sake, download expectations. If you're starting a podcast, I know when we started, I was like, oh my God, checking my downloads. The people love us, or oh my God, we didn't get that many this week. You get crazy if you're really into it, but you shouldn't be. I've learned over the years, it doesn't matter. It's stupid. When you start, try not to even go down that path. Yeah. Do what you enjoy. And I've learned that over the years, like talking about music and all that stuff. We don't add music on A Quest for Magic and Steel just because I ain't got the time. All right? It's more like an audio drama. It takes more time and you're editing and creating, and I just don't have time for it. So we do that. We've done a couple like audio drama character background stories that we've added music to. But so don't worry about the downloads. It doesn't matter. It's fun to go if some of your hosts will show you like what people around the world are downloading. So that's kind of neat. Mm-hmm. Oh my God, somebody from Taiwan is downloading my show. Yeah. It's exciting. But don't worry about the numbers. It really doesn't matter. So social media, we'll start with Amara. Does it matter? And what ones should you use? Does it matter which ones?
So I had mentioned social media a little bit earlier. We have a Twitter account. And we also have an Instagram. We tried Snapchat. We didn't really do it very much. I don't know how to browse Snapchat and promote it. Probably look into that. And then we also have Facebook too. So on Facebook, we normally have people come into events if we're doing the audio drama. It helps us to communicate with each other, but we also have Discord as well. Twitter is just a good environment to find people that are doing the same recordings that you are, and also find other people that are just doing podcasts and just getting connected with the podcast environment, because there's not just gaming podcasts, there's podcasts for everything.
Sorry. So tell us about just because we got to keep moving, the Twitter community. How awesome is it?
Twitter! Woo! Yes. Thread Raiders, that's how we got our name. We raid threads on the Twitterverse. It's amazing. It's a great way to find people. It's all about talking. Just keep chatting about your podcast, get to know the community so that they can get to know you on a personal level. And that brings a lot of people.
That's huge.
To come see you. Yeah, see what you're all about.
Yeah, explain that difference.
So if you are just starting your podcast and you go into a community and you're like, hey, I have a podcast, and then you leave and don't talk to anybody, they don't care.
No.
Yeah. But if you go in and you engage the people in the Twitter sphere, in the Discords, in the wherever they happen to be, and then you go in there and you're like, hi, I'm Kim, and then chat with people, and then later you're like, oh, by the way, I have a podcast.
Exactly. Don't hit it and quit it.
They're a lot more likely to like you and actually care about what you're doing, as opposed to just being that person that's just using them as a means to
Right. It's
advertise.
not really an app for advertising. It's an app to be social. That's why it's a social media account. So the more social you are, the more people get to know you, the more people.
And that's
see your
why
stuff.
I'll let you, if you want to add anything, Chase. That's why you use social media as a promotion for your podcast. That's kind of like what you're doing. But like they said, don't make it about that. If you're going to turn people off, if you're just out there like a salesman, it's not the way to do it. You're out there being social. Twitter's amazing. Like, well, I wasn't on Facebook or Twitter or anything. We started the podcast, and I'm like, okay, we got to have our website. We got to get on Facebook, social, all that stuff. I started getting into it. You have to use hashtags to find the community. D&D, TTRPG,
Podcast.
D&D 5e.
D&D 5e. Yeah, there's a bunch of hashtags, Thread Raiders, to find those people, and you can find tweets and conversations that are going on, and jump in there and say, hey, I'm interested in joining the Thread Raiders. It's not like joining anything. Anybody can be a Thread Raider. But I want to find out more about the D&D community. You see conversations, jump in and say hi. There's nothing wrong with that. And then, like she said, you'll become friends with this awesome community, and then they may ask, hey, or they'll see your advertisement in your bio. Make sure you have your podcast information there on your website.
Yeah,
Anything else you want to add to that?
I do, yeah. So just keep in mind, here's a quick tip with Twitter. So the average Twitter post that you have lasts about 15 minutes because there's so many people on Twitter, it just goes right through their feed. So it's only 15 minutes. If you talk on that post, that will keep going through that feed over and over again, and it's a great way to bring people in. That's how you're really going to get people to see what you're doing. I had a post that I actually kept going for an entire month. And it really got a lot of exposure to what we're doing. Granted, it was about pizza and tacos.
Thread Raiders.
But for a whole month, it was there. So just keep that in mind when you're on Twitter.
Anything else you want to add?
You're welcome.
Good?
No, nothing specific. I actually know there is one thing. Definitely make sure to have a Twitter for your podcast itself as well as your personal Twitter.
Yes.
Yes.
That podcast Twitter, that can be a lot more mercenary. That can be tweeting out links, just kind of getting people,
Post your episode when it comes out. Nothing wrong with that.
But your personal Twitter, that's the one where you go out and you say, hey, that's the one you join the community with, and then you link back to that original Twitter.
Great point.
Yep. And make sure you get your Twitter handle and your domain and all of that jazz before you start your podcast, if at all possible. So you don't have I Beholder Pod on Twitter and then you're something else somewhere else. You want to try to keep that all together and be under the same
Real
name.
quick, before question and answers, I know Kim wanted to say something about it. Patreon. Should we try to get some money from our friends? You guys do Patreon?
I do.
Yeah.
Any comments about it?
It's great. No, but seriously.
Give me your money.
It is a really great way to go ahead and pull your community together and find out who actually is listening and get to know them a lot better. Kim was actually our first patron, to who I am eternally grateful.
Nice.
But no, we have built a wonderful community. One of our base tiers, somebody mentioned Discord earlier, is a Discord server, and having that as a really low barrier to entry tier for folks is a really great way to start building that community, seeing who's listening and getting a really good rapport going with them. These are the people that are, helping to keep your podcast going. It's great to get to know them a little bit better.
And they care about your podcast, and they will help you along too. So if they're like, hey, this episode was crap, you can be like, noted, and you actually care enough to tell me this. That's another thing. Feedback is not going to come. You will not get anybody to say anything about your podcast. And if they do, it's probably just a lot of, yay, it's awesome. So if you can get that actual, realistic feedback, it's really, really helpful.
Specifically solicit it.
Yes.
That's awesome.
And don't take it to heart. If somebody did not like the podcast, it just wasn't their thing. But don't feel like what you're doing is terrible
Invalid.
or, invalid
You
in any
are
way.
valid.
Yes, you're valid to us.
Yeah, important. If just enjoy what you're doing. If you enjoy it and you want quality audio out there, if you want to have fans in the podcast world, enjoy what you're doing, and then you can slowly work on making it better and better. So don't worry about it being perfect right out the gate. So we're going to finish up and do question and answers. Anybody, questions? Dan.
Can you talk a little bit about having business sponsorships and relationships with other businesses?
Absolutely. CA will say something about that. You can get commercials. You can get ads. A lot of times they go by your counts, how many downloads you get. They want your stats. So to get big ads, like Harry's Razors or anything like that, coffee companies, whatever, or Casper mattresses. A lot of podcasts right here. What are the ones we hear? Casper, Blue is the
Stitch
food.
Fix.
What is it?
Stitch Fix.
Stitch Fix.
Squarespace.
Audible. Yeah. Blue Apron, that's the one. Yeah. Yeah, we hear them all the time on every show, right? So funny. But yeah, if you have a certain amount of accounts, you can do that. There's other ways to get into as well. But I know you have a couple sponsors for Thread Raiders as well, right?
That's correct, yeah, and it depends on the sponsors too. So we have sponsors where it's just kind of an exchange. Like you're doing something with your company that I really love, and I'm doing something. So there's no money there. So you kind of just support each other and find out what you need, what you want. Like maybe they just want you to shout out, hey, I'm going to be at Gen Con this weekend, and we can totally do that for you. As opposed to, we have another sponsor that is with a contract. They, want you to mention them a certain amount of times within a month on the particular podcast. And so you just want to keep that in mind when you're doing that. And sometimes it'll be just something like a jingle or just a mention. It's just, you got to work with the particular sponsor. It just really depends.
And reach out to them on Twitter through DMs if you really want a specific person. Normally, the Twitter person can hook you up with whatever media, whatever you need to be hooked up with.
Anybody else? In the back.
I'm kind of at a crossroads of a few people wanting to move in.
Sure.
How do you go about transitioning and managing the friends play versus perhaps, I don't know how many of you selected your cast. I know you're a family.
Right.
But that whole transition, because I play with a lot of people, and
Yep.
some of them would be great on podcasts, and some of them maybe that's
Yep.
not their
Yeah. And just for sake of time, I'm going to hurry up. If anybody wants to add to that. But we did talk about that already. It's okay. And this will be, it is being recorded. So if you want to find it, you can find any of our podcasts. We're going to all put it up, right? Just so people can hear it, I guess. So there'll be specifics on that if you want to hear that. But generally speaking, you do want to select a cast. I mean, it matters what you want to do. You can just have the one mic in the middle and just know you're not going to have a big audience. It'll be your family and friends. You can have the mic in the middle and have friends and fun with your group. But if you want a quality podcast where you have people that are going to come and find you around the world, you definitely want to have a cast that are going to be select, know how to record. Go ahead.
Yeah, just making sure that they know the specifics of what you want. So no mic hitting if you're breathing heavy, like putting that in a list first to check it off. Like, hey, pay attention to yourself while you're recording this kind of thing. And if they start doing something during the recording, hey, watch yourself. You've got editing. You can take things out.
It really comes down to what your vision is. What is it you are looking for? What is it a podcast that would make you proud to put out there every single week? You know your players the best. Do you want a podcast that has the best equipment ever so it sounds incredible? Then that kind of narrows it down with the people. Do you want people whose scheduling is the toughest thing with D&D, getting everybody to be there? If you want that episode to come out every other week, make sure that they can stay with that schedule or that time frame. It depends on your vision.
Have a schedule. Have schedule.
Lots of schedules.
Yes.
Google Calendar is your friend.
But with the picking of people, make sure that they jive together.
Yeah.
That's probably one of the biggest things.
Personalities should mesh. Yeah.
Don't be afraid to cycle in guests from time to time, because I know, coming from another large gaming group, sometime, just getting that extra voice in there from time to time, especially once you have that core group established, is really great. It adds a breath of fresh air. In addition to that, it also can allow you to see other perspectives, and maybe somebody else in your group will, want to take up that mantle of DMing and editing as well, and you can have dual podcasts going on. There's a lot you could do with the medium, especially if you've got a lot of people that are dedicated and want to do it.
Or Beholder's Eye occasionally does one-shots in which we will record with either a portion of the cast, or I did an all-girls thing for the month of June because Women in Gaming.
So like a
Month is
bonus episode or something, right?
Yeah, so we did bonus episodes. So you can also, once in a while, throw out something that's different than your mainline content, just to have variety.
And we had another question.
Yeah, I was wondering, what's your experience when you were trying to get started, trying to balance working 40 hours a week, family life, and the podcast?
Jackie, don't sleep, right? Death by Mage over there. Yeah. Anyway, go ahead.
For me, it actually did mean having to cut some stuff out. I cut my podcast listening in half when I started actually editing. And that was a big thing. It's like I played less games. I had to make a call, and that's what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to make a go of this, and I wanted to see where this would take me. So I brought the axe down, and I'm standing here 2 years later. So
Balance is not in my nature. My husband can attest to this. He's sitting in the back.
Shaking his head.
I when I do something, I go all in, and I have learned to step back a little bit and start to say no more. But I like to guest on all of the things and do as much as I possibly can. So I have to have him holding me back once in a while and go, seriously, another one? You need to not. So he's been my long-suffering companion, and I love you, honey.
Love you.
We love you.
And you can also think of this. This is something that you like to do. Put it into your work schedule.
Right.
This is something that you want to do, something that you enjoy. Make the time for it. We only have so long that we normally record, for maybe an hour to 2 hours in between work. But we do it. We want to do it. We want to put it out there. So set up that time and make sure that your group can obviously do it. But you want to have a group that can do it. So if they can't, just make sure you're flexible with what you're recording, and it might be different every other time.
So for me, I work 40 hours a week in my daytime job and 30 hours at nighttime for Thread Raider stuff a week. So it gets, a lot of people in our community too, like my message boxes are full and you're trying to get back, but I make sure I'm there for that podcast because I know that I want it to be out at a certain time, every other week or a week, whatever you choose. The more that you have it out there, the more people are going to see it. If you put out a podcast episode that's only once a month, you might not be remembered. There's just so many podcasts out there. So it is important to be able to get it out there a certain amount of time during the month so that people can remember you and really appreciate the stuff that you've done. You want them to see it. So it is incredibly challenging, but especially when you have a crew that depends on you to be there, that helps too. It helps motivate you to be there.
Yeah. And you have to you have to make it part of your schedule.
Yeah.
It has to be part of your life schedule if you want to do it. You can't do it otherwise because it will kill you. Not literally, it could literally. It'll drag you down, and then it becomes a negative thing.
Right.
So you got to be careful at that. So it has to be something you enjoy doing, that you love, and it can also become like a job. I'm doing this, like I'm doing advertising or whatever.
Especially with editing.
It matters what kind of show you. Oh yeah, the editing. You have to have time for that. But it's scheduled things, and then you have to be careful. So we do an audio drama as well, Arc City, season 1, season 2. I have all this stuff going, and I started getting a little crazy, like trying to edit it and make it perfect. And I got frustrated. I started emotionally kind of beating myself up, and it wasn't good enough, and I didn't have enough time. And then I'm like, you know what? Finally, I woke up. I'm like, stop it. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
I put it down. I'm like, it doesn't have to come out
Step
April
away.
1st. No, it's okay. I can just do it when I can do it. As far as the shows that you're playing with, your fans expect it, so it's going to be a weekly thing or bi-weekly, so try your best to stick with that.
And also the length of your podcast helps too. So if it's only like a half hour long, I listen to a lot of podcasts that are only half hour because I'm always constantly on the run. That works for you too, as opposed to like a 6-hour D&D session and you're trying to get it out every week. That's just really tough.
All right.
Yeah.
We're going to have to end. Anything else you have to say real quick? Okay. All right, yeah, we're going to have to end because it's 5 of, and I know they have another group coming in. We're definitely going to be here. We have swag. If you guys want some swag from our shows, it's here. Stickers, pins, bracelets.
Stickers.
I also
So come up and grab those. I'm going to start wrapping up everything. We're going to head out. We will be here if you have any questions. We're going to just be hanging out, right?
Yeah.
If you have any specific
Yeah.
questions. Thanks for coming. Give yourself a hand.
Thank you so much. We really appreciate it.